Hello everybody, my name is Taylor and I'm with Jersey Cares. And today, in case you couldn't tell by my neat little setup here, we're going to be talking about nutrition labels. So nutrition labels are these bad boys on the back of every single packaged food you eat, and they're supposed to help act as a guide for making healthy choices, and they're supposed to help you know what's in your food. But they look a little scary. They got a lot of these numbers, a lot of words going on, so hopefully by the end of this video, we'll be able to help you learn what you're supposed to look for when you're looking at these and how to help them help you make healthy choices.
So here is our nutrition label, and there's a lot going on here, so let's break it up into 4 easier to understand parts. So basically, the 4 parts that you see here are color-coded. The first one in blue is our serving information. The second one in pink is our calorie information. The third one in yellow is our nutrient information. And the fourth one, and most important one, is our percent daily value information in purple. So all of these work together to try and guide us to eat healthier. But let's dive into each of them separately for right now. So the first one is a serving size. And serving sizes are really interesting because they're not the amount that you should eat in order to be healthy. They're not a government portioned amount. They're just the amount that a manufacturer or the people that make the food think that a person eats. So for example, if I have a box of cookies and they tell me the serving size is 20 cookies, it might not be healthy for me to eat 20 cookies, but that's what the manufacturer thinks the average person eats. So that's the size that they put on the box. So I wouldn't always use serving size as the amount that, is recommended to be healthy, but it's the amount that they measure all of the other numbers on the label by. So if you change the serving size, you change all of the other numbers on the label. But we can get into that later. The next part of our nutrition label is our calories. So a lot of people get nervous when they hear about calories, and calories are nothing to be nervous about. They're just a unit of energy, and the calories on a nutrition label just tell you how much energy is in a serving. Some people count calories to watch weight, so that's why it's on there, but it's not something that you need to be scared of. The next one is our nutrients. So nutrients are really, really important. And nutrients on a nutrition label just tell you which things you should be looking out for. So some things on a nutrition label include the amount of saturated fat in something, the amount of calcium, and some of these nutrients you want more of and some of them you want less of. So you generally want more things like calcium, vitamin D, potassium, iron, and fiber. And you want less added sugar, sodium, and saturated fat. But how do I know how much of a nutrient is in what I'm eating? Well, that's easy. You look at the daily values. So daily values are these really scary percents that we saw in the beginning, but they're not anything to be scared of. They just tell you how much of a nutrient is in one serving of a food. So why does nutrition kind of get complicated? Well, you go back to the beginning and you can see that the serving size affects all of the other numbers. So for this food, the serving size is 1 cup. But let's say I wanted to eat 2 cups of it. Then that means I have to double all of the other values on the table. So since I doubled 1 cup to 2 cups, I double the calories from 280 to 560. But then I also double all of my daily values. So if I eat 1 cup of this food, I would eat 23% of my amount of saturated fat for the day. But if I eat 2 cups, then all of a sudden I'm eating 46%, almost half of the amount of saturated fat I can eat in a day. Percent daily values are called daily values because they're the amount of a food you should eat per day. Now, it's important for a lot of these that you stay under or go most to 100% because 100% is the tip top of a percent. So that's basically our quick little rendition of the nutrition facts label, but there's one more part that's really important, the ingredients list. So an ingredients list is not exactly a part of the nutrition label, but companies are supposed to put them on there, and they're mandated to tell you everything that's in a food. So what's really important about the ingredients list, in addition to just telling you what's in your food, is it kind of tells you how much. For example, if I'm making a cake and the ingredients list on the box says there is sugar, flour, and honey, the order of those will tell me how much is in there. So, if the first ingredient in a food is sugar, then that means that sugar is the most plentiful ingredient in the whole food. So it's important to look out for things like that if you're trying to watch certain nutrients, you don't want too much added sugar, then look on the ingredients list. If sugar is the first ingredient, then it kind of tells you this food has a lot of sugar in it. So maybe I should pick something else. But yeah, that's about it for our nutrition label lesson. Now let's figure out how to apply it in our everyday lives.
So now that we know all the important parts of a nutrition label, you might be wondering, well, how do I actually use that to help me make healthy choices? Well, it's easy. Let's say that for breakfast, I had Cheerios and milk. And to make everything a little bit easier, I had them according to the serving size, which for each is 1 cup. However, for dinner, I know that we're going to have these amazing looking ribs. The thing is, as delicious as ribs are, red meat has a lot of saturated fat. And I don't want to eat too much saturated fat. In fact, I shouldn't eat more than 100% daily value of saturated fat in one day. So, I need help figuring out what I should eat for lunch so that by dinner, I won't go over my limit for saturated fat. Well, we can start by looking over what I had for breakfast in terms of the nutrition value. So for my Cheerios, I can check for the saturated fat. And it says right here, 0 grams. So nice, I haven't eaten any saturated fat from my 1 cup of Cheerios. But I need to make sure that I also add the cup of milk that I had with my Cheerios. And over here, it says it has 5 grams of saturated fat, which is 1/4 of the total amount of saturated fat I can have for the whole day. So for lunch, that means that I can't have something with too much saturated fat, or I'll go over 100% when I eat my dinner. So here are my 2 options I could have for lunch today. I can either have my rice and beans, or I can have mac and cheese. But keeping in mind that I need to keep my saturated fat below 100% daily value, I need to check the nutrition label to see which one has less saturated fat. So if we check out my mac and cheese first, you can see that it has 2 columns. Since I'm not just eating the mix, and I'm eating it as it's prepared, I'm going to look at the as prepared box. So if you see saturated fat and go over to as prepared, it has 13% daily value. And that's for 1 serving, but in this whole box, there is more than 1 cup. And if I'm really hungry, I'm going to eat more than 1 cup. So, to find out how much saturated fat is in the whole box, I need to do a little bit of math. So, it's 2.5 servings per container, so that means we need to multiply everything by 2.5. So 1 cup is 2.5 cups, and 13% is 32.5%. So let's add the saturated fat from our breakfast to the fat from our lunch. We'll end up with 57.5%. So, in a day, we can only eat 100%. So let's take away the 57 because we already ate it. We're left with about 42.5% for dinner. But red meat can have 41.6% per serving. So maybe I should pick something else with more legroom. So it looks like the amount of saturated fat in the mac and cheese plus the amount of saturated fat that I had in my cereal this morning won't give me much room to stay under 100% daily value for my dinner. So let's look at our second option, the rice and beans. Well, I need to look at both of the labels since I'm going to be eating both of them. So if I look at my beans first, I can see that
these beans have 0% saturated fat. So that's a really good sign. And then we need to look over here and we can see that rice has 0% saturated fat. So having rice and beans for lunch is the best option so that I can have the tasty ribs for dinner.
Now you might be thinking, well, Taylor, can I still use nutrition labels even if I don't have like 20 minutes and a calculator? Yeah, of course you can. I'll show you how. So I don't know if you guys caught this earlier in the video, but when I was introducing the nutrition facts and the parts of it, on the percent daily value, there was a really quick guide right in the bottom here. It says 5% or less is low and 20% or more is high.
So the quick, easy way to use this rule is when you're looking at a food and it says it has a lot of fiber. You can look at the back and see if the percent daily value next to fiber is 20% or more. If it is, then the food is high in fiber. And in the same vein, if a food says reduce salt and you want to see if it actually only has a little bit of salt, look at the salt and see if the percent is 5% or less. If it is, then it really doesn't have a lot of salt. In general, the nutrients that you want to be looking for your 20% or more is going to be dietary fiber, vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium. And then the foods that you want to be looking that are near 5% or less are things like saturated fat, sodium, and added sugar.
That's all there is today for this video, so if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll be sure to take a look at them. But yeah, be happy and healthy.